Looks like everybody's in.
Okay, very good. Hello, everyone. I'm Carol Lisbon, Chair of the Dover Planning Board. Following the guidance issued by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts in March of 2023, we are conducting this meeting by Zoom. So for those who are not participating at the moment, I do request that you go onto mute. And if you do want to speak, to either unmute and either try to politely interrupt or raise your hand. This meeting is being recorded and will be available through the Town of Dover YouTube channel for those who wish to watch it. So I'm going to call a roll call vote. George Sidgwick,
Here.
Val Lynn,
Here.
Bill Motley. Bill, I think you're on mute. Bill? Well, his hand's raised, so I'll give him that. Okay, of course, I'm Carol Lisbon. We also have Jasmine Farinacci, our town planner, and Sue Hall, our planning assistant. The first item on the agenda tonight is a endorsement of an A&R at 84 Strawberry Hill Street. And I will ask, who do we have representing 84? And are there any abutters involved? I see Karen Thornhill.
Rick Grady from Grady Consulting also, along with Karen.
Okay. Any abutters? Vera, are you in a butter? You're on mute.
Well, they're unmuted now.
Okay, so we do have Vera who's at 80 Strawberry Hill Street, I believe. Okay,
Oh, I'm
Well,
sorry.
we have
Mr.
either-
Wilson. Mr. Wilson's raising his hand. I don't know if he's in a butter.
Hi, Carol, Brad Wilson, and I'm at 85 Strawberry Hill.
okay, thank you, Brad. Okay, so with that, before Jasmine reviews the application with us, I would ask that whoever's going to speak about the A&R request, do so now.
Sure. Is it okay if I share my screen?
Absolutely.
It would be on my PC, the one that says Rick.
Oh,
Grady,
okay,
not the-
sorry.
Yeah,
You gave
what?
it to the one with the picture, not the one with
That happens.
the computer capabilities. There you are. You should be all set now.
Okay. There we go. All right, there we go. Again, Rick Grady from Grady Consulting. This is for Karen Thornhill's property at 84 Strawberry Hill Street. She's got about 42.5 acres here. She would like to convey the back portion of the property to the Hale Reservation. We've been working with Land Court as well as with Karen and her attorney on this. And real simply, they want to divide it by this line right across the middle of the property right here. We'll zoom in a little bit. The existing house and outbuildings are located towards the front of the property here. That's depicted as Lot 1. There'll be 23.27 acres that will stay with the existing home of the Land Court property, as well as 2 acres of non-registered land that's also part of the same property where the house sits. The total frontage is 95.05 feet on Strawberry Hill Street. Of this, 45.40 is registered, 49.65 is unregistered. There will be no change to the existing frontage. All of the existing frontage will be maintained. The back portion that will be conveyed is about 19.275 acres, shown as Lot 2. It's not a buildable lot by itself, and the only purpose is for conveyance. You will notice the dashed lines here. We had to conduct a full traverse around the perimeter of the property in accordance with Land Court standards. So that is meant to depict the measurements that we took around the full perimeter of the property. There's numerous stone walls, drill holes, other monuments around the perimeter, as well as the traverse.
This meeting is being recorded.
With that, I'd be glad to answer any questions the board may have.
Okay, thank you very much. We always love to see landowners donating land to one of our open space organizations. So Karen, thank you very much for your donation to Hale. And do we have any questions before I have Jasmine go through the process? Okay, Jasmine, take it away.
Excellent, thank you. So this A&R is for, it's a pre-existing non-conforming lot. The only non-conformity for this lot is the lack of frontage. It has 29.32 feet of frontage and the lot requires 200 feet of frontage in this zone. However, there is no change to the existing lot that has the existing home and the frontage on it. That lot will consist of 624,000 square feet. Oh, I'm sorry, that's what they're separating out. They will still have over 1 million square
correct.
feet left on their residential lot, so 1,013,969 square feet. And it meets all the setback requirements, all of the dimensional requirements, except for the frontage. The rear lot that they're separating out will be 839,624 square feet that they will then be transferring to an abutting owner. And there is a note on the plan that says it is not a buildable lot as it is.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions from planning board members?
So I'm sorry,
I just,
it's been conveyed
ahead.
to Hale, is that right?
Yes,
Can you please just outline who the abutters are on the portions of the parcel here, please? I guess where's Hale on this?
oh, sure. Can you see that okay, or do you want me to zoom in a little further?
I think I'm good, thank you.
Hale Reservation is to the rear here. We've got Town of Dover on both sides here. Cashman's here, although a portion of theirs was conveyed just this past year that we were before the board on. Town of Dover, Trustees of Reservations over on the left here. Trustees of Reservations again on the left here. That Town of Dover property wraps up to here. And then we start getting into the landowners here. Nacren at 78 Strawberry Hill. 80 Strawberry Hill Street here. 89 to the left. And 85 somewhat across the street or across the easement here.
Got it.
So George,
Thank you.
back at our first meeting in January of 2024, Mr. Cashman went through with an A&R as well and donated land in this area as well.
Seems familiar, yeah.
Yep. Do I have any comments or questions from Brad Wilson or Vera abutters?
I think I'm all set.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Vera, are you all set? Okay, not hearing anything from that. I'm going to.
Carol, I
yes.
just have I have
Oh,
one quick
okay,
question.
Val, sorry.
That's okay. I just wanted to clarify and make sure that I understand. Are there any conservation restrictions or anything like that placed on this land at this time? Or is it being conveyed as, I mean, technically it could be a buildable lot, but it's not being conveyed as one right now?
Correct, although lot 2 by itself really couldn't be a buildable lot because it wouldn't have frontage.
No frontage, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no access.
No other restrictions on the property currently, though.
Okay, thank you.
And as we do, I did have our easement and trail expert, Amy Moot, take a look at that, to look at it as well. And she obviously feels very appreciative of the Thornhills donation as well. So, any further questions? In that case, I make a motion to approve the A&R application for 84 Strawberry Hill Street. Do I hear a second?
Second,
Great, thank you. I will now take a roll call vote. George,
approved.
Bill,
Approved.
Val,
Approved.
and Carol approved. Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you.
You all too.
Thank you.
Okay, now we'll go on to the second item on our agenda, which is the amendment to the DPW salt shed decision that we had approved earlier this year. And who do we have here for this application?
Good evening, everyone. My name's Jesse O'Donnell. I'm an engineer with Weston and Sampson representing the DPW tonight, specifically Kevin McCabe, the DPW director.
Okay, and is Bobby Tosi on? I saw
I don't
Bobby.
see him. No, I have
Nope.
a B. No, they just left. No, I don't have him on.
Okay. It's Kevin's out of town, so Bobby was going to, at least as of late morning, was going to fill in. But I think we'll get started. So Jesse, I'm going to turn it over to you to review.
Sure. Thank you very much. Let me just get my screen on here. Can everyone see that fine?
Yes.
Great. All right. So as Ms. Chair outlined, we are looking to request to modify the previously approved site plan approval from May 1st of earlier this year. So just to remind the board of what was approved back in May, it was some proposed stormwater improvements in the rear portion of the DPW's garage parcel, as well as a new salt shed, since the salt shed on the site currently is aging and in a state of disrepair. So what we're planning to review tonight is an additional update to the previously approved plan in the form of a proposed fuel island. There is a fuel island on the site currently, and the warranty for those fuel tanks have expired, and we're proposing a new fuel system on the site in conformance with local codes and in a configuration that will be much more conducive to the fueling operations that the town needs. So let me jump into my slides here. So just to orient everyone, I like to display an aerial. So on the bottom in green, you'll see the town hall. Just across the street is the DPW's parcel. So in orange is the large town garage, which has the office and administration and vehicle space. In red is that subsurface stormwater system, which we are proposing and have been approved to replace as part of the May approval. And then in blue is the salt shed, which also was approved to be removed and replaced as part of that May approval. So let's jump into this modified plan that shows the fuel system, which is kind of the subject of what we'd like to discuss tonight. So on the left of this image, you'll see the building, which is the town garage in gray. And then kind of in the central portion, there's a rectangle, a dotted rectangle. That is the new subsurface stormwater system that was approved in May. And then the red, orange, and blue kind of colored areas you see off to the right at the bottom of the screen. This is kind of the nexus of where our fuel system is proposed. So I'll just go over a few of the features. In orange is the actual double-walled split steel split tank. So this would be like about a 10,000 plus or minus gallon tank that has gasoline and diesel fuel for town vehicles. We would have a single-sided vehicle fueling configuration. So vehicles will be pulling up to the left side of that orange rectangle and fueling. Then we have concrete fueling pad with bollard protection. So the fueling pad that vehicles will be lining up to fuel will be concrete. We'll have bollards protecting all of the fueling appurtenances so that they don't get damaged by any errant kind of circulation by vehicles. We have a diesel exhaust fluid tote that's in blue. That's just to house some of the diesel exhaust fluid that's needed for some of the town's vehicles. And then in red, we have the fueling canopy. So there is a canopy proposed. We are going to tie the canopy to the subsurface stormwater system via a roof drain pipe. And then last but not least, one item I'd just like to quickly mention is we permitted this site with the Conservation Commission in June, I believe, right after we received planning board approval. And they just approved a head wall that's in green on the northerly portion of the site, just like a 2 or 3 foot head wall, just to best reduce erosion to the nearby wetlands. So that was just a quick feature that we included on behalf of the Conservation Commission's request. So that's a general overview of what is proposed. Once the fuel system would be installed, as shown on this plan here, we would then move forward to decommission and remove the existing fuel system on the site, which is in the front of the site. So currently we're looking at the rear portion of the site. And off to the left, off of this screen, is where the existing fuel system's located. And I'd like to share a quick photo of that. So the photo you see at the top of this slide is from the vantage point indicated by the arrow. So we're kind of from the rear portion of the site looking out to the front, looking out to the right of way, and where that Dunkin' Donuts is located in front. So we would just be proposing to remove the above ground fuel tanks associated with the existing system, cutting the bollards, removing the bollards from this area, removing the chain link fence that surrounds the fueling tanks, etc. So that is kind of the final portion of what this amendment modification proposal involves. So with that said, I would like to invite any questions from the board.
Okay, I have a few. One is probably the obvious one is why are we seeing this as amendment and why wasn't it done with the original application?
Yes, that's a good question. It's something that was being contemplated by Kevin and the DPW for a while, but we were unsure with respect to, I think, with respect to funding, whether it would be something that would be possible in the short term, medium term, or long term. It was something that we all understood needed to be completed. We were just unsure with respect to funding when that would be possible. And we received a green light from Kevin earlier this year, a few months ago, that this is something we could look to design and permit in the short term rather than the medium or long term. So we decided to just plans and get this back in front of the board.
Doesn't really impact our decision, but out of curiosity, you know where the funding is coming from?
I know the funding for the stormwater improvements is coming from ARPA.
Right.
I'm not entirely sure. Yeah, I wish I had Kevin. I'm not entirely sure where the funding for the fuel system is being allocated from.
Okay, well,
We could get back to you on that.
yep, thank you.
Carol?
This is obviously an upgrade because it's going to be covered as well.
Right. It would be covered, which is a big plus. And one other item I'd just like to mention is the existing fuel system where that's located in front of the site. It requires a lot of the larger DPW vehicles that use it to fuel up to have a challenging maneuver to kind of back in to get into the right space for fueling. Whereas this configuration here would allow vehicles to much more seamlessly just enter the site, fuel up, and leave the site without, having a 3 or 5 point turn, for example.
Do you happen to know what is going to be done with the area that is going to be where the fuel tank is going to be removed?
Right now, we're just proposing to leave it as is. Kevin had mentioned that, here's the image, that, if we remove the bollards, the tanks, and the fence, this area, will have a concrete pad remaining there, and that could be useful for some sort of on-site appurtenances in the future. So he just thinks it would probably be most conducive to leave it as is. In the future, if they found that the site operations didn't necessarily need that impervious area, then maybe they could change to remove that impervious area in the future. For now, I think they're planning to use it in some way, shape, or form.
Okay, thank you. Bill, you had some questions?
I did, Jesse, thank you. So I have a couple of questions. Is this above ground? This illustration in front looks to me like the fuel is stored above ground. Is that a correct assumption? And would the new facility be above or below ground?
Yes, thank you. That's a great question and something I should have mentioned right at the start. You're right. This existing fuel system that we're looking at here is above ground, and the proposed one is also proposed to be above ground double wall steel tank with the canopy and the diesel exhaust fluid tote and bollards. So yes, all above ground.
And can you remind me why is it that the existing one is being replaced? What's the rationale of this? Is it
Yeah,
a
you know what?
capacity or?
That's another good question, and we looked into the warranty. Here is the letter that we submitted to the planning board. I think I just want to use the language we use directly in here.
This is gonna make you
Yes.
feel old. Come on.
I think this is the language we're looking to answer the question. So while the tank documentation for the existing tanks did not explicitly state the warranty term, the literature for those existing Convault tanks shows a 20-year warranty period. So in either case, whenever that was established, the warranty will have been expired by 2024 because the tanks were installed in 1994.
And
So
does that,
warranty
did I
is
read that
expired.
correctly? It says an optional 30-year warranty as well?
Yeah, so from 1994, there was an optional 30-year warranty. So if it was the 30-year, that would be expiring
Okay,
this year, right? So
okay. So is the reason why this is all taking place, and Carol, if I'm getting too far afield, just tell me if it's outside the purview. But is this because it's because of an age issue that we're replacing this tank? Or is it a capacity issue? Or what's the motive to spend this money?
primarily it's an age issue.
It's an age issue, a safety
yeah.
issue?
An age and safety issue, yeah. And to supplement that, if some of the justification is the configuration, the added convenience of the location of the newly proposed fuel system. But the primary reason that we're looking to replace this is due to the age.
Okay. And my last question is that the new location just seems to be in and amongst other buildings. And so in some ways it just, as I couldn't fully follow your illustration, but to bring a big truck into that area where I see it, I see the new salt shed, I see the existing town garage. Is that rectangular section on the right that to the right of your that area, is that above or below ground? That's a below ground structure?
Yeah, so that's another really good question. So to kind of get a lay of the land here, this is an existing Parks Department garage where the Parks Department stores a lot of their different pieces of equipment and appurtenances. Right here that I'm currently drawing on is a wood fence that houses a cell tower right in the middle, this circular icon here or symbol. There's a few very small concrete structures in here that serve various uses. And then our proposed fueling system is the area I'm circling right now. And it's kind of in the middle of this open paved area. And, so vehicles generally would come in from the front along the right side of the main DPW building.
Yeah.
And pull up right here.
On that
And
side.
then they could either leave the site by just doing kind of a 180 and coming from where they left, or they could pull out straight and then leave via the northerly side of the plant.
Okay. And that canopy area that what I was just, I think you were alluding to it, but the canopy area that you were referring to, could you just tell me one more time, where is the canopy area?
Yeah, so the canopy is what's in red here. So
I see. Okay.
yeah, the tank is in orange, the canopy is in red, and then the concrete pad, the limits of the concrete pad would be generally what I'm highlighting in green right now.
Okay. Okay. And what is the capacity of fuel between diesel and regular gas for the new tank as opposed to the existing tank?
I believe the new tank has, I think it's a 60-40 split. I think it's about half, if not a little bit more, 60-40 for diesel to regular fuel. And for the existing tank, I'm not exactly sure what that split was. We did a feasibility report for the DPW at the start of this whole project, and we probably have that information in there. If that's something you would like during the meeting, I could just take a few minutes to
I guess
access
I'm
that.
primarily interested in just knowing are we increasing the capacity of fuel storage with this new tank? Obviously, the age is a consideration for replacing the old, but what are the capacities of the existing versus the new?
Let me see if we have that on our plan. So our industrial engineers designed the equipment plans here. And so we have, so to answer your question about the new tanks, it's 6,000 gallons of gasoline, 4,000 gallons of diesel. As for the existing, if you bear with me, I could open up our feasibility report and it will likely have that information so that we can compare.
Jasmine, could you just double check to make sure that Bobby isn't waiting?
There's no one in the waiting room.
Okay, okay,
Yeah.
okie doke. Maybe I'll text him. Well, Jesse's looking. George, did you have some questions as well?
No, Bill hit mine. My main one was around capacity differential between the existing and the new one, and sort of what that means.
And Carol, you're not aware of was the cost of building this new fuel, was this something that was obviously it wasn't brought before the town meeting, so do we know that you don't know that? Sounds by your question, we don't know how this has been funded either.
So as Jesse said, the other funds were ARPA. I happened to be in the office with Jasmine today when Bobby Tosi stopped by. And he was going to be signing on tonight, and I asked him if he could answer my two questions. So it's unfortunate that he's not there. I just texted his cell phone, so I don't know. Maybe he's been called out on a fire or an EMT.
Okay.
But if they're not using ARPA funds, meaning they had some left over, so the ARPA funds have been designated for usage by the Board of Selectmen over the last couple of years.
I see.
Okay, so there might be ARPA funds that were left to do this. He might have, it was not on the capital budget, I don't believe, for this year. So it might be that he has just money. Well, he'd have to be ARPA funds because the cost of this is obviously more than $10,000. So if he was going to do this, it would have had to be a capital budget item.
Yeah.
And it wasn't. Kevin has been spending the time since he came on board to the town of Dover in upgrading all the equipment and all the buildings and everything else. But I too was curious about the cost, and I just don't know. But I'm assuming that Mike Blanchard, Kevin's boss and our town administrator, knows what Kevin is doing with this and has approved it.
Yeah.
And to your point before, it's not something that we legally have any it's not part of our decision-making process, but
right.
I think as we did with the last A&R application, which is, what are you doing with lot 2? It's nice for us to see the whole picture.
Well, I'm just, again, Dover has had its history of fuel spills.
Yep.
And so I granted it's 10,000 gallons. And I just am curious to know, are we doubling the capacity of fuel storage? Obviously, I live quite close to this site. As does Val. And so it does spark an element of curiosity.
Which then leads a little bit to my next question was going to be, it does say that a fire suppression equipment isn't required by Massachusetts code. And just out of curiosity, sort of how big does this have to be before it is required?
I think it's actually because the aspect is that it's non-commercial, from what I understood from Ed Cornack from the fire department, was that it's because it's not like a public use, it's not a commercial use, is why it doesn't require the fire suppression. So I actually don't think that would trigger it, but I can get clarification for you on that, George.
No, thanks. It's just, that's an interesting one to me. You could have a tank as big as you'd like on your own home, and for whatever purpose you wouldn't need it, but you do if it's public, I guess.
Well, it's interesting, right? Because 10,000 gallons, it's still 10,000 gallons, and who cares who's using it? It's still.
Exactly. Exactly. That's my
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
Um,
And I apologize, Carol, but Jesse, I assume that there's some sort of retainage wall around this fuel storage. And he may have touched upon that and I just missed it in his overview. I assume that that is the case.
Yes, so the fact that the tanks are double walled, that second steel wall is a containment wall in the
Okay.
event of any spills, and then a second layer of added defense are these positive limiting barriers, which are all of these grooves in the concrete that you would see at like your typical
Yeah.
fueling station. And that's indicated by all of these lines here. So that has some additional kind of surface area to contain fuel.
I'd like to go back to just to the bigger picture of the lot, of the whole site.
Sure.
There we go. So, the cell tower. Down in the bottom right, exactly. Is, requires maintenance. We have an expectation that shortly we'll be getting an application for more carrier involvement there and so forth. And I just want to make sure that someone has taken a look at access to that compound, if you will, with the fence.
Yeah, we had a call with Kevin a few weeks ago to identify where the gate is for this enclosure, which it's on the kind of the planned southerly side of this. And then we also made sure to maintain a 10-foot dimension between the edge of our tank pad and the fence for any vehicles should they need for any sort of plowing purposes or any sort of other access purposes to get around the back of this. So that's the layout we have considered with respect to those items.
So Jesse, do you know when they do come to the cell tower to do work, where do they park their trucks? Because I've walked through that area before and they tend to park them along that front fence line where the planned fuel tank is. So I'm just kind of curious, is there still room for them to park anywhere?
Yeah, I'm not sure about the operations or the kind of logistics. If they do park along kind of this area here, there is enough room for any sort of vehicle to park along here. There wouldn't be enough room for two vehicles side by side to park, for example. So if a vehicle was looking to maintain any of the infrastructure inside this cell tower area and they parked, say, where I'm indicating in green right now, they would be restricting access through this kind of pathway for the time that they're parked.
Right. Because those trucks tend to be almost like you would see for like Verizon, they're like the larger equipment trucks. They tend to be. And it looks like there's a remote emergency pump shutoff switch just in front of where you had said that one of the openings to the cell tower area is.
Correct. Yeah, just surrounded by a few bollards here. These circles surrounding it are 4 bollards.
Okay, so they'd have to, if they were going to park in that area, it would have to be, if you're facing it to the be the south area.
So, if you're a truck coming in from the left, and you're a big truck coming in from the left,
Sure.
and for some reason you need to get to the northern part, but you can't go between, for whatever reason, whether it's snow or whatever, between the back of the garage and the top part of the canopy area. And you were going to go around the back of the fuel tank. Can you, and you've got this shutoff switch there. Where do you go? Do you go north of the shutoff switch or south of it to come around?
So let me see if I can answer that question by illustrating a little bit here. So if this helps, this area that I'm highlighting in green, outside of this green area is all open pavement. So all the area outside of the green areas I'm highlighting right now would be open for vehicles to traverse throughout the site. So if someone wanted to drive in here. They could drive up and then work their way through
okay.
as I'm showing. So the tightest portion is this 10-foot dimension right here. That is the tightest portion. That's kind of the bottleneck, but everywhere else, there's much more space for vehicles to maneuver around the site.
And,
It's my
and
unders-
that's, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead, Val.
I was gonna say, and it's my understanding that just to the side of that cell tower fenced area is another pathway that sometimes DPW uses to access Haven Street. There's a
Indicated by the
fence.
blue here.
Yes, yeah, there's a fence with a rough gravel driveway.
Yeah,
Right.
that goes back towards the Fryer property,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, Jesse, I'm putting you on the spot since no one from our DPW department is here. But do you feel that in the conversations you've had with Kevin, that the issues that we've raised have been considered and that this design is sufficient?
I do, yeah. And with respect to the funding, it does appear Kevin's had conversations, and I think we would be quickly able to answer that question. With respect to, I just jotted down a few of the questions. I think Mr. Motley had a good question about if there is an increase or decrease or stagnation in terms of the amount of capacity relative to the existing tanks, and we could just find the size of these existing tanks to answer that, I think, relatively in short order. And then regarding any sort of electric or fire code or issues surrounding, what size tank would necessitate any sort of fire protection, or if that is even a variable that necessitates fire protection, we could answer that too. So we have done our due diligence to cite this feature, this overall fuel system in a way that I think works with the site and with the regulations locally, but we can certainly answer some of these more precise questions, I think, in relatively short order once Kevin returns this week from his time away.
Jesse, I just have a couple more questions. The canopy, how high is it? And have you measured the height of the largest truck that DPW has to ensure that it certainly will fit under there? And should they, purchase in the future a truck that has even a more height to it, is this going to be okay?
Yeah, great question. Let me go to the plan that shows the canopy detailing here. Here we are. So the canopy decking is 15 feet above the drive pad. So we've got about 15 feet clear here, which is conducive, compatible with the existing fleet that Kevin has and the expected vehicles that would be fueling here. Actually, it's 14.5 to the bottom of the fascia, as I'm highlighting here. It's a good question about whether there's any sort of proposed expansion of the fleet or any other additional vehicles that we would want to be aware of. I imagine when we laid this out, we've had a few calls with Kevin and we've done a few quick reviews. I imagine that is something that we would have highlighted if it were expected, but certainly worth something just to point out in a literal sense to make sure we're crossing that box off. So I will add that to my list as well, just to discuss.
Yeah, I asked because in the past, there were renovations done to the firehouse. And then shortly after those renovations, they purchased a new truck, which did not fit through the doors with enough space to safely get it in and out. So then they had to make more renovations.
Yeah.
That was a fun meeting.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So we'll certainly talk about that. I'll bring this up to Kevin.
Okay. Thank you. And I'm also thinking, a lot of those trucks haul things, right? So sometimes the things that they're hauling might stick up higher than what the height of the truck is. So just to make sure that there's some sort of excess space above them. And then secondly, if there were to be a spill, I know, Bill, you started questioning this. If there were to be a spill, I don't know if you can go back to the original plan that we're looking at. What is the flow of where the gasoline would flow to?
Yes, let's go over that. It's a good question, and it kind of marries up with the stormwater design for the site. So the tank is in orange. If there were to be a spill in the tank, let's go from like the most remote point of the tank relative to our stormwater infrastructure. If there was a puncture you know, in the almost near impossible event that something would puncture both walls and water were to flow out from this location in green, it would follow a flow path like this. It would flow this way, and then it would eventually start to flow this way, and eventually into this new double graded catch basin. And then eventually through this water quality treatment structure, which has been sized to remove pollutants and impurities in stormwater and any sort of spills before, you know, discharge to the wetlands. So that
I
would
don't
be
think it
the
would,
pathway.
I don't think it would remove gasoline.
Yeah, so that's a good point. These treatment units are mainly for physical, like
Debris.
deposit of sediment and yeah, materials like that. The gasoline itself, I don't think they are rated to have any sort of appreciable removal of gasoline. But it has there are, you know, there's a sump in this catch basin. So, you know, there's some features that would help in the event of a spill, but in the event of a spill, you know, we would need to certainly conform to any spill response procedures that are part of our
The spill that happened in Dover was not that anything was punctured. It was as gas tanks were being refilled by a big tanker that the gas spilled out during that filling process. So that's why, so where on here would, when a tanker drives up to fill these tanks, where do they fill them?
Yes, so let's see. A tanker would fill up right here. The dispenser is I'm Xing the dispenser right now. So they would fuel up at the dispenser right there and park right alongside the bollards right here.
Okay.
Jesse, when this was reviewed with the Conservation Commission, was there any discussion from the Conservation Commission about this whole issue of the oil spill and your the stormwater plan and not having the filters that impact gasoline?
This project, this amendment or modification is outside of the conservation jurisdiction. So this improvement is not something that is within the conservation's jurisdiction. So from a stormwater perspective or a spill response perspective, you know, I'd invite any sort of commentary or feedback that you may have.
At which point does the DEP get involved with these types of facilities or approvals?
They certainly do, and I think there's certain size triggers. I am not familiar with the DEP code as it relates to these more industrial components. My expertise is a bit more in like the site civil layout and engineering of utilities, and not specifically like the fueling systems. We certainly have staff at Weston and Sampson who have assisted with this project that would be able to answer that question. So let me jot that down, and I can follow up to provide an answer to that as well.
Thanks.
And then one other question, which you might have on here, and maybe I just missed it, but there's also a water protection zone in that area, I believe, as well. And I don't know if you were to zoom out, if you're able to see like where that zone. It would be like behind the cell tower. And behind the salt shed, I think.
Yeah, there is a wetland adjacent to the salt shed. So let me highlight the edge of the wetland is generally as I'm highlighting in green, and it's an expansive wetland that goes back to the rear portion off of the site out here. So that's where the wetland system is. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, I think there's also a water protection area back there as well. In addition to it being wetlands, a drinking water protection area. I just don't know how far from this location it is.
Yeah, as far as I'm aware, this whole site and all of the properties around it are in the Groundwater 1 protection district. So it's encompasses a massive portion of the town, and this property and all of the properties surrounding it are part of that groundwater protection district.
But what I think I'm hearing here, which is raising some skepticism on my behalf, is that because I believe this is the town garage, that I think what I'm hearing from you is that the guidelines and regulations that might affect, for example, a private residence, that this property is exempt from some of those regulations. Am I hearing that correctly?
I'm honestly not sure the answer to that question, how this would marry up or be compared to a private residence if some private
Okay.
I think it was
residence were
commercial, Bill.
proposed.
Yeah, I think it was commercial.
It's
If it's commercial, then there's at least fire suppression requirements, but if it's not commercial, then there aren't, and this technically isn't commercial. It's not commercial.
that was with regard to the fire suppression. Right, but
Right.
I was going to the comment that was made earlier, not about the fire suppression, but that with respect to the flow of fuel, and Val had asked a question about, was there any way to retain any spilled fuel? And I thought that Jesse had said that because it was I thought I heard that conservation requirements were exempted for this property on another matter. Am I mistaken something?
Yeah, if I
think
can,
Oh, go ahead, sorry.
Thank
yeah,
you.
if I can clarify so what we're proposing here, the limit of this modification is generally, within this area that we're proposing here in green, and that falls outside of the Conservation Commission's 100-foot wetland jurisdiction. So we're further than 100 feet
I
from
see.
any wetland, and thereby we
Oh,
don't
okay.
need conservation approval for this piece of the project.
Okay.
But to your point, Bill, it doesn't change a common sense question of if it's 102 feet outside of the zone. What
Well,
is it?
only because, and I'm particularly nervous just because it flows right in the direction of wetlands. And so I guess it begs the question that if there were, a catastrophic situation where a big truck backed into it and it did, create a leak, what is to say that what's gonna retain? There's nothing that doesn't sound like it's gonna retain the fuel other than double walled system. And that may just be industry standard. If it is, please tell us so. But it does beg the question, and obviously this is the time to ask the question.
I think it's a very valid concern. It is the industry standard. So we are
Okay.
conforming to standards here. We can discuss with Kevin and with our industrial engineering staff to see if there's a third or fourth layer of, added protection that we could try to implement here. But this isn't the industry standard, as far as I'm aware.
But it does flow, as you indicated, it does flow in the direction of the wetlands.
Yes. Yeah. So any
Okay.
sort of spill would be caught by the stormwater management system and then piped eventually to the wetlands.
I see. Okay. So this didn't really come up in front of Concom for the reasons that we discussed earlier, that it's outside the 100-foot buffer zone.
Right.
So
But Jesse,
I'm sorry, go ahead, Val.
it looks like there's also drainage pipes in the front of the system, correct? It looks like clean out.
Yes. So the red canopy is
Mhm.
connected
I got it. Okay.
to this pipe, which flows into this manhole structure here and into this like larger chamber system.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's more for stormwater.
Correct.
So it appears that we have some questions about the impact of the design should there be a catastrophic leak. Recognizing that we have experienced that in Dover,
Yeah.
and it was a catastrophic impact. to many residents in town and continues to be. And quite frankly, I just have some concerns about the general flow of lots of large trucks and equipment getting around that area where there are now tanks in the middle of what would normally be a large open area for driving, especially when I think about winter and, you know, if we ever get back to 10 feet of snow and those types of issues. So, do you have is this something that you're planning on building while you're there doing the stormwater? What's your timeline for this?
Oh, I'm sorry. I think I went out for about 4 seconds there. Could you just repeat the question?
What is your timeline for building this? Is it while you're on site doing the stormwater work?
No, we would look to bid this portion of the site separately and construct this sometime, I think, in the latter half of 2025 or thereabouts.
Latter half of 2025?
Correct.
You mean 15 to 18 months from now?
Yeah. Yeah, because so the timeline for the overall site improvements here is that the salt shed is currently in the process of being constructed. The stormwater improvements will likely occur early next year in the spring, once the salt shed is done, the snow has been melted. And then we would look to do the fuel system after that. We are looking to go out to bid with all of the stormwater improvements imminently to get those ARPA funds realized and allocated. And then this would occur after that. So yeah, sometime I think in the middle to later part of 2025 is the idea. I would like to defer to Kevin just to confirm that though.
Okay, well, given all that, it would be my recommendation that we request to review this again when Kevin is here. And giving you a chance, Jesse, to answer some of these questions. How does that fly with everybody?
I agree. I agree. And I'm sorry, we go through so many of these, but Jesse, when we originally were approving the salt shed, was it I remember the fuel station, was the plan at that conversation that eventually you would be coming back to us for this approval of the fuel shed or the fuel facility, or is this more of a later concept that came up with the building department to add this?
We always had the intention to propose a new fuel system on the site and to replace the existing one. That was part of our feasibility study that we had started with the DPW more than a year ago.
Okay.
So we just weren't sure if the fuel system would come in kind of in a few months or in a year or further down the road. And I think due to the funding, it's become an item that we can start to work towards now.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Are there any other questions to be posed to Jesse so he can do his research prior to another meeting that we might have with Weston and Sampson with Kevin in attendance?
No.
And if I may, I'll coordinate with Jasmine. I'll jot down all the questions that I've written and email them to Jasmine. And Jasmine, if you'd like to just confirm with me, we can get all of those kind of aligned so that we can start to answer all of them in the coming weeks.
That would be great.
Sounds good.
Oh, okay. Jesse, thank you very much.
Thank you all. I appreciate the
And
consideration.
we'll see you in a few weeks or next month.
Alrighty, sounds good. Have a good night,
Very good.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Great discussion. Thank you all for that in-depth review.
Yeah, I mean, interesting. I mean, obviously it's something that probably the town needs. But it just seemed like there was a lot unknown about that. I really remember the conversation about the salt, the salt shed, but this topic relative to the fuel obviously invites a lot of questions. And I didn't recall this being part of the agenda when they had first come to us.
No, I think it may have been something that Kevin was discussing with Weston and Sampson, but it wasn't anything that was discussed with us.
Right. But is this also something that the highway department might be coming to town vote in the spring, for example, and seeking
No.
approval? It's not going to be something that's on the taxpayers, to our knowledge.
No, well, again, I don't know where the funding is coming from.
Yeah.
They can't, you, from a municipal law standpoint, you cannot go out to bid without having the funds already approved.
Thank you. Yeah, I should know that. Yeah. Okay.
So if they wanted to do this with capital budget funds, for instance, or bonding funds, they would have to go to town meeting
Have
first.
come to us previously. Thank
Right.
you.
Yep. So I've got those concerns, and it just really bothers me to have fuel tanks in the middle of a big area. I urge you all, we have beautiful weather for the next couple of weeks. You know, on a weekend when you're taking a walk, go down to the highway garage and actually take a look at the area.
Yeah, I mean I know it well, and you're right. It's a bit of a cramped area down there, as was commented, it does back right up to that cell tower, and there's a lot of debris that they store down there as well. So I agree with you.
Yep. Yeah, well, whiteout blizzard and all those snow plows and sanding trucks and
Yeah.
yep. Okay, well, we'll wait for that, and Jasmine, you just let us know when it gets back put back on the agenda.
Absolutely. I just wanted to share this really quickly because Val had brought this up and this was a good point, but it is in, do you see it? This is the Water Protection District in red. That it's within.
Where are we here?
We're
Yeah.
in the yellow.
Got it.
out.
Yep,
So all this red hashes, all the water protection resource, like Val said.
got it. Good point.
But Janet didn't mention that. She said it was outside of the wetland jurisdiction, but I'll ask her specifically. But what about this?
Well, you know, yeah, and again, I mean, the tank may be outside of the 100-foot buffer, but the
Still
area
wouldn't
that the oil
care.
would go into, that the gas would go into, is within it, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's a bit silly, right? I mean, if the lay of the land runs right into the wetland, it doesn't matter really that the source of the fuel is another 10 feet away or something, right?
Correct.
Right. Okay. Great discussion, folks. Thank you. Let us go to the next agenda item, which is a discussion of the Board of Selectmen's fiscal year 25 initiatives and goals. So this was included in your package. So this is the third or fourth year, I think, that they've been doing this, where they issue these goals, some of which young eyes can read and some which old eyes cannot.
Sorry, I tried to get it to fit all on the screen.
I know, but
Um,
while we've got it all on the screen, are there any comments? Let's start at the top, right? So we don't need to get the whole thing on the screen. Are there any comments about the priorities and the focus areas and the key actions for the community engagement and communication items that they list? I will say that we have done a lot of work on the planning board website. And it has been enhanced significantly by some great web pages on housing and 40B and the MBTA Community Act. And Jasmine has been working with Chris to ensure that that's all up to date. And I think we at this point pretty pleased with the way our part of the website looks like. Rest of the boards and committees, I think, have a lot of work to do, but the tree committee work that Val and her committee did as well is very well positioned on the website. So any comments on that first grouping of actions? No? Okay, technology. Online permitting. So Jasmine, when you draft our response, I think, we should just strongly support
Yes,
the online permitting
I
focus
agree.
area and urge that it get done as soon as possible.
Right, make it a high priority.
High
Yes,
priority. That will have a huge impact on how we all operate, how the planning board operates, but basically how the whole bottom floor of the townhouse operates.
Oh, completely.
Yeah.
They're not even going to believe. I mean, the setup is initially, it's a rough month or two, but once you're there, oh my gosh, it's a dream.
Yeah. So that is one that we're going to want to highlight. Anything on the third grouping? Oh, that's just town operations and services. So that's the whole issue of our search for a CFO, which isn't going well. And HR, not particularly relevant, but Robin is a great addition to the townhouse staff. And then we get into the special projects. So Mike Blanchard, just for your information, Mike will be getting out a RFP for the municipal electrical aggregation this fall. And all the surrounding towns have it. Medfield has a very high participation rate on their program. So it'll be interesting to see how they do for Dover's rates and how it compares to the rates that we're currently paying from Eversource and whatever other distribution companies we're using. I'll take the opportunity right now to give you a quick update on Rail Trail, and Val, feel free to, and Jasmine, feel free. So Jasmine, Val and I have been involved in some overlap, but also in different ways with the reintroduction of a Rail Trail group currently being supported by the Park and Rec Commission, who has taken on the mantle. And we had one meeting about 2 months ago. We have another meeting this week, I believe it's this week, to work on a more defined timeline, identifying various actions, and discussing how we're going to put together a working group of folks that can roll up their sleeves and do all the work that we know needs to be done. Jasmine has done some work with Kevin to identify grant funds that might be available. And Val, of course, from her Friends of the Dover Greenway Day, involved in looking at private philanthropy as well to fund the project. The timeline for it is aggressive and is basically a goal, which is a special town meeting in the fall of 2025, which of course is also when we might be having a special town meeting for the MBTA Communities Act. So the MBTA Communities Act will take precedence because we've got a legal requirement. But I think we all work better when we have a goal and under a little pressure. So right now the Rail Trail timeline is for the fall of 2025. And more to follow. So I would ask you all to think about folks you might know who might be interested in spending time with the Rail Trail, a working Rail Trail committee. There's a lot to be done. And if you know of anybody who might be of interest, to please let Jasmine know. The Housing Study Task Force. The RFP is out for a consultant, $100,000 consultant. If it comes in a little bit higher, as I think I mentioned at the last meeting, we have funds available in our budget, planning board budget, for consulting services. So if it comes in a little bit higher because of some specific granular work that will be done for the MBTA Communities Act, then we would supplement the funds approved at town meeting for this consultant. We'll have to wait and see what what we get back as far as responses from consultants. Jasmine, were you able to ever find out what the dates were in the final RFP?
Mike did send it to me. Let me pull that up. I will get that answer.
So we're trying to move this thing along, and the we were going to give, I think, two or 3 weeks for responses, and then have a meeting within 7 or 14 days of the task force to choose a consultant, assuming that we have good choices. So while Jasmine is doing that, we had a good presentation by our MBTA consultant. As soon as the newest draft comes out as a result of that task force meeting, we are going to put it aside and wait and see what happens in the rest of the communities over the next 4 to 5, 6 months, and then start fine tuning ours on that. And again, the big issue is the property, and we're going to have to do a lot of work on that concurrently. Sustainability, it doesn't really involve us at all. DPW implementation is just a continuation of reorganization, emergency management with our new police chief. It's pretty clear cut. So water. So as you know, George was involved in the water study committee that worked with CDM Smith to do the consultant report. George, you have any comments on that?
Yeah, so I'm not going to address the points that are made here. Really, I didn't put these in there, though the last one is a little interesting to me in that 3 of the recommendations put forth by CDM Smith in that March report. Well, there are 3 recommendations, 2 of which were different ways or places to procure additional supply. One of which was not didn't involve Denham Westwood, so that's a little bit of an interesting one to me. That's
Oh,
kind of a new one there.
That's new.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying. Is
Aquarius,
that's not from
yeah.
the report. That's something that's exactly that's new. Exactly right.
Yeah. Aquarian came to the selectmen on that earlier this summer. Late spring.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So yeah, my goal is to go through and add a couple points here and some actionable items and things the town can do to sort of work in some of those CDM Smith recommendations. As I say, three of them. There's 3 of them. 2 of them are ways to procure further supply, which I think is, in the end, in the report, it effectively says it's sort of a difficult thing to achieve, just given the water delivery or lack thereof that we have here in town. And I think the one that probably makes the most sense involves having a new position within the town of what they would call an environmental and regulatory coordinator. And under that, there would be different items or actions that we would look to achieve. Now, do we need a specific sort of role in order to accomplish that, or can we just sort of list out some of these individual items that maybe we can achieve without that role? But either way, I think those are the things that I would be looking to add to this.
So George, after we talked this morning, I did take a look at the CDM Smith report. It's on the website, everybody. If you just search for CDM Smith, you'll get the report.
Yep.
Section 4.2.2 actually gets a little bit more granular in some of its recommendations. So my concern with it, which I think I've expressed before to this board, is that the CDM Smith report talks about water in a macro sense. And we have no water conservation program in the micro sense here in Dover. And in fact, no one who is authorized or has any responsibility to develop any kind of micro program. And the bylaw that was done 2 years ago, I think it was the 2023 town meeting, which addressed what happens if the state is in a drought, was a start. But there is so much low-hanging fruit relative to water conservation that could be done, and that other towns around us are doing. So I think we should, even though it's not a specific planning board issue, since we've been asked, however, I think our memo, back to the selectmen should suggest and recommend that, that the low-hanging fruit micro actions that can be taken by towns to address water conservation should be addressed. And, maybe it ties to the sustainability committee. You can make a case that the new sustainability committee, that water conservation could fall under that, and maybe we should make that recommendation as well. So to link item 9 to item 6.
Yeah, well put. So that's the sort of point here, right? Is there was actions we'd like to take, and then the other part is sort of who's taking them, right? And who's sort of responsible. So can that be done by the sustainability committee, or is it require a new position? But those are the two aspects that need to be addressed here. But yeah, the report is short on micro sort of specifics as to what can be done on a conservation standpoint. That was an issue that I'd raised when we had reviewed the report when it was presented to us. But yeah.
George, perhaps you could author a paragraph or so on this, on the water, and get it to Jasmine, so
Sure.
that she can include it in our memo
Sure.
back to the selectmen, which I think is due within the week or so.
Will do.
Sorry, Carol, just while there's a pause. Kevin McCabe posted the housing consultant RFP on Combis last Thursday. So it's already
Okay.
made its round in the newspaper. It's on Combis, and the deadline for submittals is October 1st by noon.
October 1st for the consultants. Okay.
Yes.
So by mid-October, we will have made a decision, assuming we have qualified responses. Great, thank you. Anything else on the selectmen's list here? Okay, Jasmine, I know you were looking at something else while we were talking, so George is going to get you some comments relative to the water
Perfect. Thank you so
initiative.
much.
And how it relates to maybe pulling it in under the sustainability committee. The charge of the state sustainability committee was worked through the housing task force. Only because there were a bunch of us that know the town on the housing task force, so Robin asked us all to look at it. So it does fit very well into the housing task force, the sustainability charge, which the selectmen will be reviewing at their either their next or their within the next 2 meetings. So we should make that point.
Absolutely. I'll make sure that gets in the memo.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I'll take a look at the draft when you're done. I think it's due sometime like on the 16th or 17th or something, wherever that cover memo was.
Yes, let me see. It's right here. It's due Thursday.
This Thursday?
Thursday the 12th.
Thursday the 12th.
So I'll get it to you tomorrow.
Before you go to bed tonight, George.
Well, all right.
Wonderful. Okay. And one thing just to keep in mind with this is this is, as we all know, whether it's from our professional jobs and for-profit, nonprofit, municipal, we pay a fortune for consultant reports. We look at it, they go on the shelf. And I think about what the tree committee is doing, what Val is working with the tree committee on, where they've taken every single, the 40 or 50 items that the Conway School came up with and working their way through each one. And that's what we should be doing with the CDM Smith report. So.
Yeah, unfortunately, there aren't 40 or 50 items.
Yeah, unfortunately.
But-
Well, they could, because they weren't asked to do what a lot of us wanted them to do, which was the micro stuff as well. So, okay, on to the tree committee. Val, it's all yours.
Okay, let's see. I think we maybe can get some of the items out of our way as far as updating the charge of our committee. And then also requesting reappointment of the members. So, Jasmine, do you have either of those documents or do you want me to pull those up?
I have them both, so which do you?
How about we start
prefer?
with the charge?
Okay, perfect. Give me just a moment.
So, our committee needs to update the charge because as we were looking at Tree City USA requirements, and then also things that the tree committee that was disbanded by the town meeting about a year ago, we were looking at each of those pieces and trying to decide if we needed to broaden our scope a little bit to make sure that we are encompassing all the things that our committee is doing or we anticipate will be doing. So we made some edits, not like, you know, extreme significant edits, but enough to broaden our scope a little bit.
Jasmine, what I have on the screen right now is the reappointment, not the mission.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Oh, goodness. Okay, sorry, hold on, it's giving me issues loading now.
Okay.
Let's see if we can get it from the email.
So quite frankly, the beauty of the tree committee working under the planning board is that we can theoretically choose to have the tree committee do what we think they should be doing. And then Val is very adept at working synergistically with all the other folks and boards and committees and staff in Dover that overlap.
It's nice because a lot of the boards and committees actually reach out to us. So we feel like we've been able to establish a really nice relationship with many of them.
Yep.
Um,
Okay, so we still don't have that one.
What are you seeing now? Sorry.
We're still seeing the members,
Ah,
but it's page 1 of 2. So why don't you go to page 2?
yeah. Although this might be the old, I think I sent an updated one.
there we go. Charge approved. Right? Can you see that?
I think it was the draft charge that I had sent.
This was all that was in the September 4th email. Say this.
That one.
That one.
This one?
Nope, go up,
This up.
There you
there.
go.
Oh, okay. Okay, so that was the email. Okay.
Yeah, so okay, wait, actually, this is the only paragraph that will change in the charge. The rest of it all stays the same.
Right.
This is the draft paragraph. So, and it's just, I'll read through it. The items in red are the items that we've updated. And then we just kind of struck out some of the things that we thought were no longer necessary. So the Tree Preservation Committee will provide support to the planning board by performing research, drafting tree preservation bylaws, conducting community outreach, and developing community education programs. This committee will collaborate with other land use related departments, boards, and town staff, such as the tree warden, on tree preservation concerns, initiatives, planning, and care throughout the Dover community. The community will ensure that resident voices are heard throughout the committee initiatives, and the committee will submit recommendations to the planning board for action related to education, to educating the community about existing and future tree-related bylaw development, and will provide an annual report summarizing the completed and ongoing initiatives and activities. So the big thing is that the Tree City USA is looking for wording that says that our impact is reaching the entire community and especially town-owned land that has trees and providing care to town-owned trees. So that's why we just added a little bit of the wording here to make it more explicit for what we're doing. So this is something that would need to be approved by the planning board. As we are looking to extend our committee, we would be, this committee would be ending November 21st of this year, 2024. But we are asking the committee to extend, or I'm sorry, the planning board to extend our committee for an additional 2 years. So we would then be active through November 21st, 2026 with this new charge.
So let's discuss the charge first. Any comments on the charge? You're on mute, Bill.
Sorry, you touched upon it, but I was reading, as it relates to privately held versus public land, is this charge related to public land, town-owned land only?
So,
Could you just-
yeah, so a lot of the work that we do, like most recently when we were looking at stormwater, that the work that we did there would impact both private and public. But we wanted to, in these revisions, really emphasize the public impact. So we talked about working with the tree warden and the initiatives, planning, and care throughout the Dover community, because we want to make sure that we're encompassing all of the town land. And so it's right now, it's both, but we wanted to kind of emphasize that we are impacting, like tree management plans on public lands. Or we've talked about within our committee, a master planting plan on public lands. So those are some of the things that we're talking about as we go forward.
So for example, though, the theory, this wouldn't so much apply to a concern that we've addressed in prior meetings of a developer coming in and clearing all the trees on private property and the impact that might have on abutting neighbors, for example. That's not really.
Yep, so this committee, the tree committee, would be looking at recommendations for tree-related bylaws. It would be passed by the planning board. So what we would do is we would help to develop it and do the research and provide all the information. But because it's a zoning thing, it would, a zoning bylaw, it would actually be the planning board who determines what
Yeah.
moves forward.
Okay, thank you.
So it's an excellent point, Bill. So all the activity that occurs on private property relative to trees, either at this point falls under our new stormwater bylaw or would fall under a new tree preservation bylaw.
Right.
Is that right, Val?
I like it.
Thank you.
George, any comments?
No, it's well written. I thought it laid it out pretty well, actually. I think it's great.
Yeah, I think it's superb also. So let us take a vote to accept and approve the new Dover Tree Preservation Committee mission statement. I will take a roll call vote. George,
Yes.
Bill,
Approved.
Val,
Approved.
and Carol, absolutely. Thank you, Val. I think this is great.
Thanks, Val.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
And at some point, we'll have to, we talked about maybe getting in front of the selectmen when you go over some of the Arbor Day stuff for the signs, to present this to them as well.
And then I think our second step is there's a memo. Jasmine, if you would like to pull up the memo about the reappointment of members.
So while that's being done, Val, it dawned on me that, and I apologize for not thinking about this when we were talking the other day, that we really should just get this committee onto the same calendar as all boards and committees,
Okay.
right? So we can either have this committee end at on June 30th, 2025, which is when the
okay.
fiscal year ends, or we could have it end on June 30th, 2026.
Okay, that works too. That would be great. So I will make that note in our memo. So, okay, beginning, so it would still begin November 21st, but end June 30th. Is that what you're saying?
Yep, and I would say 2026.
Okay, great. Okay, great. So with this memo, our tree committee, is all of the members are interested in continuing forward with the exception of our high school member who, is now off to MIT. So she has, resigned and stepped down. We will be looking for a new high school member. And, but in the meantime, we will be otherwise keeping, the same membership until June 30th of 2026. And so I offered to remain as the chairperson, Janet Bowser, who also sits on the Conservation Commission, is still with us. Shannon Crotty, who's a resident of Dover, Jay Crocker, who's a resident of Dover, and also an arborist, Boyden Glidden, who is a resident of Dover. He is on the Open Space Committee and also in the forestry industry. And then Jean Lukenda, who is our newest member, is a landscape architect.
Looks like a perfect committee.
It's great. We work really well together. We have some really great discussions. Yeah, it's been really great. Thank you.
I think your committee has probably been one of the most productive and impactful committees this town has seen in quite some time, in a very short period of time. So
Yeah,
it is a great group, and thank you.
Yeah, everyone, you know, we've tried to kind of distribute the workload amongst the members, and everyone has really stepped up and has done their part so that we could be a very effective committee. So I really thank all the members on our committee.
So with that, I'm going to make a motion to extend the Dover Tree Preservation Committee to June 30th, 2026. And appoint the following folks with the term expiring on June 30th, 2026. Val Lynn, Janet Bowser, Shannon Crotty, Jay Crocker, Boynton Glidden, and Jean Lukenda. Do I hear a second?
Second,
Okay, let's take a vote. George,
Approved.
Bill,
yes.
Val,
Yes.
and Carol, yes. Okay,
Okay, and then our third item is, so with our new charge and mission, it asks for an annual report. So I put an annual report together to review, and I won't go through all of the details on it because we've talked about many of the items that we've already accomplished, but we've had a busy past 2 years, which included a couple of milestones, bringing in a consultant who did a really fabulous job of helping us do some research, put together a document and a list of recommendations going forward. And we then began working through those. So we did have a couple public forums that we had some really engaging members of the community attend and conversations. We initiated the application for Tree City USA designation, and we're able to receive that for the first time. We celebrated Arbor Day for the first time and had a really nice community engagement with that program. And we partnered with other either groups or boards through all of this. So, and I have to say that the Highway Department and the Tree Warden have been really instrumental in helping us achieve a lot of these different activities. So we've been working closely with them. And as I had mentioned earlier, we worked with them on the stormwater bylaw management and gave recommendations for improving tree preservation aspects of that. And that passed through the town meeting, and we are currently working on the regulations. So we've had a really a great and successful 2 years. And then looking at the next 2 years and what we're starting to work on now, our committee recently set our agenda and some initiatives. Oh, thank you, Jasmine. Created some initiatives. Actually, I'll have you go to the next page, maybe. Yeah, right here. Thank you. Because I'll, for the interest of time, I'll kind of talk about what we're going to do going forward. So some of the things that we're doing are maintenance and continuation of the items that we've been working on, and then some are new. So we are going to once again complete the Tree City USA application and continue that for the town of Dover. We just received a little congratulatory package, which included 2 street signs and a flag, and what else was it?
Banner.
Oh, and then a little plaque. So we are working on identifying where each of those items are going to go. And I'm sorry, Jasmine, if they're taking up space in the planning board office. But we'll get those taken care of.
Whenever you
So
get
we're
around to it, no worries.
we are continuing to work on the stormwater management regulations with the highway department, I believe, or with the Public Works Department. I believe they've received feedback from the state on the bylaw and from Nina, our town attorney. So now there's just some revisiting those edits and any updates that we need to add to those. Our committee, part of the charge is to provide community education. So we are planning to have a community education session likely in October. We're waiting until we can get those stormwater management regulations a little farther along so that we can really use that education opportunity with the community to help them better understand the regulations and anything new that might be impacting them. But then in addition to that, we will be reviewing existing bylaws. So like the scenic roads bylaw for new members in our community or folks who might have some questions about these. We will be looking at a new bylaw that we will be providing information to the planning board on, which would be looking at clear cutting on larger lots. And especially now that Hale did not move forward with having a conservation restriction within the Dover portions of it, we think that this is something that's really important. So this will be something, we don't have any specifics on it yet, but what we're thinking is for lots that are probably larger than 2 acres, making sure that people can't do clear cutting if they come in for whether it's a subdivision or whether it's some sort of multifamily housing that isn't within MBTA or the 40B state regulations. So that's kind of what we're looking at with this. In the past, Dover has looked at cluster housing developments, which is a type of subdivision where you would be allowed to have higher density development in exchange for conserving larger portions of the lot. So you could, maybe setbacks are different. Maybe you could, have smaller lot sizes so that you could fit more housing within that area. So those are all these different aspects that we're looking at as we start moving forward on this bylaw development. And then the supporting creation of a tree fund. Last year with the stormwater management bylaw, there are pieces to the regulation that require property owners, if they have a large project and they are cutting trees down that are in the perimeter of their lot, that they would either have to replant them, or if there's no room to replant them, they can give money to the town. And there's a schedule associated with that. So this would be a fund that the town would formally create to put those tree monies into, to then be used by the town to plant trees on public property. And then I had
Val,
mentioned, yep.
I'm sorry, you mentioned public property, but so would that also deal with the idea that if developer A clear cuts everything on the property and just clears right up to the property line of another private owner. Is what you were describing, I know you referenced public land, but in the case of private to, developer to private land, is that speaking to that issue as
Yeah.
well? Because I know that's
Yep.
been a concern.
Yep. So the way it works is first, the town would expect that any trees that can be replanted on the private property that's being developed in the perimeter area
Yeah,
should be replanted. So there would be an accounting of how many trees are removed, and it would be based on the inches of like the trunk diameter. And then there's a formula that they would expect a certain number of inches to be replaced.
thank you.
And
Great.
the idea is, the idea is to replace them closest to the area of where they were removed. So if it's, for example, if it's a septic system and they have to remove trees for a septic system, they would ask that the trees be replanted as close to that area where they were removed so that there's minimal disruption to the abutting neighbors from runoff and stormwater.
Great, thank you.
Yep. Something else that we're looking at is a master planting plan. And this came up when, actually, Bill, you had mentioned it once, that you had thought it would be nice if the town could set up some sort of a memorial or recognition for folks who have donated land to the town in the past. And so when I brought that comment back to our tree committee, Jean Lukenda, actually, she has a great breadth of knowledge, and she had suggested that the best way to do something like that is to have a large planting plan that would cover, like, say, the entire center of town, so that when people would like to donate funds or a tree or something, instead of kind of randomly placing trees all over, there's a plan and they would donate toward the implementation of that plan.
Yeah,
And
great
so,
plan.
and since we have the Village Center initiative happening, we have the potential for the rail trail, we have the community, Carroll Community Center going in, which is going to require landscaping, as well as a couple other things. We thought this might be a good time to try to initiate a master planting plan that would kind of coordinate all of those efforts and try to have like a coordinated look across the town rather than, everybody doing their own thing and having a very disjointed look. So that's something that we're going to hopefully be able to start. And then lastly, continuing with Arbor Day, we'll be planning in April to host another community-wide Arbor Day celebration. So these are the items that we're going to be focusing on over the next 2 years, but really working hard on them over the next 1 year to get as much of this completed as we can. And we're always looking for volunteers.
Well, once again, part of our job as board and committee members is to, when we're chatting with our friends and neighbors, is to think about all the things that we're aware of that need support in Dover. So we have a tree committee spot. We have folks that we need for Dover Housing Task Force, which, and I think I sent you out an email a couple of weeks ago that now that Val's a full member, we need a new associate member of the planning board. So please give it some thought, talk to your spouses, hell, talk to your kids and see what your friends' parents they like. But we need to find somebody for all those positions. So, architects, real estate attorneys, regular attorneys, just folks that are interested in the housing. We have plenty of spots for them. So, Val, thank you so much.
Yes,
This
you're
was
welcome.
great.
Thanks, Val.
All right, thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the appointment of the liaison to the Open Space Committee. As I've probably mentioned last year, it's one of my favorite committees to be on. And this year we have an awful lot of overlap, working with them on helping us being the Dover Housing Task Force, to find some properties for overlay districts. So unless there's a strong desire for anybody else to be the liaison, I would throw my hat in the ring.
My hand is down. For what it's worth.
Okay.
Thank you, Carol.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you.
All yours.
Okay, thanks. I don't think we need to take a vote, but okay. So let's just quickly get on to the minutes. We have the minutes of the meeting, the short meeting we had with the Board of Selectmen to appoint Val as a full voting member. So unless there are any comments, I move that we approve the minutes of August 15th for our joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen as submitted. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, thank you. And then we have the minutes of the planning board meeting that we had an hour or two later, or actually 15 minutes later, I take that back. Also submitted, that's when we discussed the MBTA bylaw and we did the sign permit for Dover Eyes. So unless there are any comments, I will make a motion to accept the Dover Planning Board minutes of August 15th as submitted. Do I hear a second?
Aye.
Second.
Second.
Okay, everybody please say aye.
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 Okay, great. Thank you very much. Sue, just one thing, the minutes that you sent out for the joint meeting still had some of my edits in red. So before you send it on to Felicia, just make sure that you accept all the changes. Thank you. Updates. We've talked about the MBTA draft bylaw. We've talked about the housing task force. We've talked about the rail trail. The town meeting calendar has come out, approved by the selectmen at their last meeting. So Jasmine and Sue, the planning board office will be sending out to you all a calendar invite for the town meeting, which is on May 5th, 2025, and a calendar invite for the open hearing with the warrant committee, which is on March 17th, 2025. They've opened up the warrant a little earlier this year. Usually it's in December. They've opened it up in November, right before Thanksgiving. So, and it closes in January 22nd. So I've asked Jasmine to present to us at the November meeting our list of warrant articles that we're going to want for town meeting. Just to refresh your memory, we may have to make changes to the ADU bylaw that we finally got passed because of the new Affordable Housing Act that the Beacon Hill passed this summer. We're waiting for input on that from Nina. Last we had heard that the FEMA floodplain bylaw that we approved 2 years ago, we're still waiting for the maps, and supposedly the maps were going to be available late fall, early winter, and would be approved at the town meeting to be effective in July of 2025. Jasmine has to follow up with the state on some confusing information from them on that, so we may have that. We may have a tree preservation bylaw from the Tree Preservation Committee. And we will have again, and finally, an easement bylaw similar to the one that we pulled the weekend before the town meeting in May of 2022 that George and Jasmine are working on. So that's what we know so far. That's enough.
That's a lot.
That is a lot. So any other comments, questions, or updates?
This afternoon, Carol, I spoke with Elizabeth Armstrong.
At 95 Dedham Street or 97 Dedham Street.
97, yes. And she had also heard about potentially there being a 40B at that same property we discussed this morning. So
93 Dedham Street.
yes, so I took down her name and phone number. I'm just going to start a list of the abutters just in case something comes in. But that's the third person today, so.
Well, that's because the owner of the property is Pat Corrigan. And it's been on the market for a while now. He has not, to my knowledge, received any kind of viable offer. So I believe that he approached Elizabeth Armstrong and her husband, Mr. Powers, about acquiring 97 Dedham Street as well, to give a bigger lot for a bigger 40B.
She did say there is a large pit in the back, and I'm wondering if that's what all of that dirt was that you saw.
Could be. I did
She
take a
said the
walk.
pit has been there. It's a crater that's been on the property, and he would have to raise it.
Oh, I see. Okay, so
Yes.
yeah, who knows? I don't know what the property looked like before I walked it last week. So oh, but that reminds me that the Conservation Commission has received an ANRAD request for Tisdale Drive or Red Robin 2, whatever we want to call it, 80 and 85 Tisdale Drive, from Mr. McGovern. And the ANRAD is to, like they did with Pulte, is to define the wetlands on the property. So it looks like they're going ahead. So one can expect that we'll be receiving, the town will be receiving a 40B application, in the next couple of months for an apartment building behind the current one on Route 109. So again, if you're driving around and you haven't looked at it recently, take a drive on 109, make a right and make a turn onto Tisdale Drive, go down the cul-de-sac, and you'll see where the new 40B might be put, and you'll see what the current 40B, now called the Pastures, looks like. Same developers. So I think that's it. Great meeting, great discussion on the fuel tank. I really appreciate everybody really thinking that one through. So with that, unless there's anything else, I will accept the motion to adjourn the meeting at 8:47. Do I hear a motion?
Second.
Okay, there we go. So the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody. And we'll all be in touch.
Thank you.
Thanks, Carol.
Okay, thanks
Goodbye,
so much.
everyone.
Our next meeting is
you.
September 23rd.
Thank you.
Okay, good night, everyone.
Thanks.
Good night.
Right.